It seems like no one is paying attention to your church. Is that their fault or is it your fault? In today's video, I'm going to uncover why. Oh, we got a streaming error here. We're going to keep going. In today's video, I'm uncovering why no one is paying attention to your church, what we can do about it, and how you can craft a message that people cannot ignore. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the Best Known Church Show, where we show you how to reach with church marketing that will help you increase your impact, make more disciples, and become the cornerstone of your community again. This is for the leaders with an outrageous vision, because anything less would be an inaccurate reflection of our Creator. The ones who have unreasonable faith, because you know God works unreasonable miracles. And the ones who are relentless in the pursuit of your calling, because anything less would not make a good and faithful servant. If that's you, you're in the right place. Now, please welcome your host and guide on this journey to become the best known organization in your community, Justin Nava.
Welcome to the Best Known Church Show. I am back after a brief, what should have been a brief hiatus. So I appreciate you guys sticking around, staying subscribed. What should have been a 4 to 6 week renovation on our house, which meant I was not able to use my normal office space. It turned out to be like a 2.5 month, and eventually I was like, we can't keep this. We've been doing some really good work at Nava Church Marketing. We've really streamlined our processes to implement them faster, implement them more cost effective. And I finally said, you know what? I'm gonna stop putting this off because the message has to get out there. It's not gonna look pretty. It may not even sound pretty. I'm using my Go mic. I'm using the cheap webcam that's installed on my MacBook here, but we've got to get this going. And so I appreciate you guys for tuning in, despite the lack of quality we may normally have on the show. But why am I not waiting until I get back in my office, even though it may be 1 to 2 weeks away? It's because we are seeing triple growth in the number of guests coming into our clients' churches in 90 days. In 3 months, if you have 3 guests a month right now, what would change in your church if by 3 months from now, August, September, October, right before the Christmas season, instead of 3, you're seeing 9? What if you get 5 guests right now a month? What if instead of 5, you get 15? And then not only that, as we enter the anniversary of many of our church clients. This program started at the beginning of 2022. We're now in the middle of 2023. We've got clients, some of them seeing 10 times the number of guests coming to their church after 1 year of our definitive church marketing method program. So if you're getting 5 a month, whoa, what could happen if you get 50? A lot of churches watching this, they're only getting 2 or 3. So to think about 20 coming in, that's a new family every week. Some of us 2 families every week. Now, we want manageable, sustainable growth, and that's what this is all about. Let me ask you this, and if you've taken this test with me, I want you to do it again and see if you get a better score here. We're gonna do what I call the grocery store test. Imagine you're in line at the grocery store, and I am in front of you, got all my food on the conveyor belt, put the last loaf of bread, because I always put the bread last, on the conveyor belt, and I turn to you and I say, hey, you're the pastor of that church down the street, right? What's the big deal about your church? And I want you to answer that here. I'm going to give you, we're going to do something you should never do in broadcasting. I'm going to give you dead air for 15 seconds because this is a test. I should have music prepared, but I don't. This is a test. Ready? So tell me about your church. What's the big deal about your church? Okay, you know what? That sounds good. I'm gonna stop you there. I appreciate your time. The checkout girl is asking for my credit card, so I gotta go pay her, right? The question is, I know that wasn't quite 15 seconds, but it's like dead air. You just can't do that on broadcasting. The question is, did you have a definite answer for what's the big deal about your church? Or did you kind of sit there and go, we're your church. We just love God and we love people, and we meet on Sunday mornings at 10 o'clock. Or did you say, well, that's not really fair, Justin. I want to ask this guy some questions. So hey, tell me about you. I mean, do you believe in Jesus? Have you committed your life to Christ? Are you looking for a church? I appreciate that. Okay, but before I'm going to answer any questions, you have to capture my attention beyond the first question I asked. So if you're going to answer my question with a question, you're not really answering my question, right? So I mean, imagine you came up to me and said, Justin, tell me about how you're tripling guests in 30 days or 90 days, and I say, oh, that's a great question. Tell me a little bit about your church. Pastor, what do you? No, I got to have an answer for you, right? Well, what we do is we use our definitive church marketing method, blah, blah, blah. We're not going to do a pitch right now. This is a podcast. I want to give you what you came here for, which is how to craft a compelling message that people cannot ignore. The point of the grocery store test is to test whether or not you have a solid answer. For example, if you ask me, hey, Justin, you're with Crosswaves Church, right? That's my church. Tell me a little bit about your church. Hey, we believe that Christians really want to share their faith with friends and family, but it's hard. No one shows them how to do it. It's difficult, and it's kind of awkward. Let's just be honest. So what we do is we allow you to have church in your home. So instead of inviting friends and family to a church they've never been, to be surrounded by people they don't know, it's very simple to bring them in, learn about the Bible, have some honest discussion, break bread together, and then it makes it easier to share your faith with friends and family, right? That's so much better than just, we're a home network of churches that we meet on Tuesday nights. And well, anyone can meet on, that's what we used to have before we did what I'm about to show you today. Same thing with the church in South Florida. Not to just sit here and give you examples. We will get into this, all right? But a church in Florida, we used to tell them, hey, they used to tell me, hey, pastor, tell me about your church. Well, things are hard right now. And, we're just trying to do our best. And, I believe that God's good and God's a good God. And we meet Sundays at 10. And really what we want to do is we just want to help the community, right? Like, I think that's a lot of people's quote unquote pitch there. When someone says, tell me about the church. If you ask Pastor Victor right now, tell me about your church, he's going to say, the world has its boot on your neck, our neighbor's neck, and life is not fair. And what we do is we show you what Jesus can do for your life so you can get healing, you can be delivered from what ails you, and you can live a better life the way God calls us to live. And you can live better, love better, serve others better. And what's better than asking? Giving. You'll be so blessed in our ministry from what Jesus is going to do. You're going to be able to give better than you've ever been given before, right? That's his message. I don't have it down pat. But that is a better answer than just, hey, we hope we can help you and we meet Sunday mornings at 10, right? So that is the point of today. I want to test you there, and maybe at the end of this, after watching this, you'll have a better understanding of what you should say in line at the grocery store. Let's get into the first thing here, and I want to first talk about why no one cares about your church. And in the next few minutes, I'm going to uncover just why no one cares about your church. I think we've all found that churches have, we feel this, right? We go out into the community, we feel like we've done a good work putting out yard signs, spreading the word, printing thousands of invite cards for our congregation of 100, right? Like, the people should know about our church. Maybe we think at least one person out of 10 should know about our church, but yet we go out and it seems like we're the best kept secret because we're a good church, we're doing good work, we're serving our community, we're feeding hundreds of people, and yet when we go out and invite someone to church, the first thing we hear is, who? Like, what church? Which one is that? Or worse, it's like, oh yeah, I've heard about that church on Claremont, and they're like, no, we're on Bel Air, and like, they're totally confusing you with another church. Why is this a problem? Thank you. Why is this a problem? Well, number one, you sound generic, okay? We live in a culture in America. Now remember, if you don't know us, who we are, and I didn't really do a good job of introducing myself, I just wanted to jump right into it. We serve U.S. churches primarily. We will consult and possibly do some work for churches overseas, but our strength is America and the American culture. We are stuck right in the middle of, kind of being that faith-based Judeo-Christian culture to a postmodern, post-Christian culture, okay? So we're in that unique thing. So our services are built for this kind of church, local church coming into this culture, okay? The problem in the American culture right now is that we are inundated, we are bombarded. When I say we, I mean just the typical American, with messages that the church is failing, it's full of hypocrites, screw-ups, and it's being led by pastors who want to take advantage, who are abusive, malicious, and just in it for nothing but selfish reasons other than to feel better because they think they're better than you. Okay, just open up TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. turn on the news, you're going to see stories of pastors who abuse their flock, stories of church staff who are now calling under question from allegations. Whether they're true or not doesn't matter. You and I both know that just because someone makes an allegation, people may believe it even if you're proven innocent, right? The harm is done in the court of public opinion, whether or not it comes out it's true or not. So this is a big problem. And so if your church just comes off very generic and you sound like every other church, they're going to think you are like every other church out there. We hear this a lot in our church clients' testimonies. When people come in and say, you know what, I saw your church and I realized you're not like any of the other ones I grew up around. You're not like any of the ones that I've seen or tried out, right? Once we actually do work with these churches and help them solidify that message, it really helps them stand out and stand away. So, if you feel like no one's paying attention with you, the chances are you're just sound generic. Okay, not only that, you may sound overwhelming. Imagine walking into a brand new church, right? We all want a good greeter ministry, first impressions ministry, assimilation ministry, whatever you call the people that welcome you to the church in person, right? A good greeter says, hey, I'm so glad you're here. How can I help you? Right? And maybe sees you have little kids. Let me show you to what grade are you in, sweetheart? Third grade? Let me show you to the third grade classroom and let me show you to check in and help you check in. And hey, while you punch in all that information there, I'll stay right here and let me know when you're done. I'll walk you over to your class, introduce you to your teacher. Or maybe you come in and say, hey, welcome. Are you here for service? Let me show you to a seat that's open. And that way you can have one of the best seats in the house that maybe you wouldn't be able to know it's the best seat in the house. Or maybe, hey, older folk comes in, hey, let me show you to a seat that's not as loud as some of the other seats, and that way you can still hear yourself think, right? We want that as a visitor in church, right? Even though we may not say that, we say we just want to walk in, don't bother me, but it's less overwhelming if someone can bring us into the party, so to speak. Well, the same thing can be true in your message, right? I think this is where a lot of churches go wrong. We think if we just blast as much as we're doing out there, it'll pick up on something. What you end up doing is deafening someone, okay? Meaning, imagine you walk into a church and the greeter says, welcome. Do you want to sign your kid up for VBS? We've got a brand new sermon series starting this Sunday. I'm so glad you joined us. And by the way, on Wednesday nights, we have prayer meeting. We'd love to come pray with you, be prayed for. If you have a prayer request, leave it up at the front. And are you here for Sunday school? Great. We've got 12 Sunday school classes. So let me tell you about every one of them. This is often how our church messaging comes across on social media, on our website, even on Google sometimes, okay? So it can be overwhelming. And because of that, no one's going to pay attention to you. The last thing I'm going to point out here as a problem that we are doing as churches is that we leave the decision making up to the guest to decide what to do. That's kind of what we talked about earlier, the overwhelmingness of our messaging. Here's everything we can do. Now make a choice. Okay? Again, the good greeter ministry is not going to say, hey, welcome. There's the restroom. There's the kids' room. There's the nursery. There's the sanctuary, auditorium, whatever, worship center, whatever you call it. Go and glad you're here, right? No, a good greeter is going to show you around. And so oftentimes as churches, when we put messages out there, right, and it can even be in your church, right, on Sunday morning, we say, go and go do something, right? Here's everything we're doing, and I hope you take an action. I hope you take a next step. You don't want to miss it, right? And so that's a problem. We're leaving the decision up to the potential guest, and if you leave all these decisions up to someone to take one and you just overwhelm them, then they're not going to make any decision. So let me go into some steps that we can start to go ahead and fix this and start getting people to actually care about our church. We have to take control and craft a guest journey that brings people to take a next step. And we can do this online much like we do in person. For example, on a website. Okay, when someone comes to a church website, first of all, if they just see a bunch of events, automatically I'm going to feel like an outsider. And so instead of saying, here's everything we do, and it's everything every other church does, and let's just get them all out, right? We're going to do everything every other church does, Sunday morning service, Wednesday night prayer service, and maybe VBS this summer, okay? You're just like every other church out there. I don't care about them. Why should I care about you? Number 2 on your website, when I come in, you're telling me all the programs that you're doing, and you're just hoping I click and learn more about one program and decide to come, right? So you're overwhelming me, and you're leaving the decision in my court, okay? Compare that to the websites that we like to build out that actually get more people coming to church. Where you land on the website, there's one thing for you to do, okay? Welcome to, again, Full Deliverance Baptist, right? The burden is hard. Jesus is, I don't think this is their website, but life is hard. Jesus is easy. Come and join us for Sunday morning service, okay? Like I see that. I'm like, yeah, life is hard. What do you mean Jesus is easy? Let me find out what this church is all about. Show me Sunday morning service, okay? Now I'm on the Sunday page. And on the Sunday page, they say, hey, preview a service here, right? Watch what that looks like. I click on and watch that video. I see a church unlike any other church I've seen. Pastor Victor preaches in a way that I've never seen. He actually is excited about the words he's talking about. People are coming up to the front. What are they coming up to the front to do, right? There is something there that is guiding me, right? So even though all the events of the church, the crusades they do, the ministries they have, all that stuff is on the website, when I first land on there as a potential guest, I'm guided in a journey to learn more about the church and eventually show up on Sunday morning. This is how we took them from 3 guests as of April of 22 to now 30 a month. Pastor told me again, 30 last month, okay? And we talked last week. So this is steps that we do to get them to take action. Just one thing is all you need on your website, okay? When they land on your website, don't bombard them with information. Give them one thing to do, all right? On social media, don't be posting all your events all the time, right? Focus on one event for the day or for the week, okay? And all other communications, focus on what you want them to do as if they were someone that you wanted to guide them, take baby steps, guide them into the next steps, okay? All of these things, we're gonna talk about how to implement it specifically a little bit later in the show, or if you're watching this as a YouTube clip and a separate clip that's upcoming. But listen, your website, social media, and all your other communication attempts are going to be ignored if you don't have a compelling message, and that message has to be crafted in a certain way. So I'm going to go into that next way here in just a second, or in the next video if you're watching the YouTube clip. So let me talk about crafting a message that your people can't ignore. And when I say your people, I'm talking about your neighbors, your community, okay? The people you're called and equipped to serve. I'm going to share with you some questions that we ask when we start crafting that compelling message. And this is the same questions that we use for these churches that we tripled their church guests and 10x'd them over the course of a year. You should ask, first of all, the important questions, not the unimportant questions. What we found is most churches ask the unimportant questions and the unrelatable questions. So the message continues to be what? Unimportant and unrelatable. What are some of those unimportant questions that churches ask that they think needs to be blasted everywhere on church, okay? Number 1, what is biblically the most important reason to have church? Like, I understand that is from a Christian's perspective, or as Pastor Sam, a pastor I used to work alongside or underneath, I don't know, whatever the hierarchy of the church was, he used to say things like, on our side of the door, we understand it this way. Or on our side of the door, we use this language, right? But on the other side of the door, where the lost are, where the unchurched are, we can't say it that way because they won't understand it, right? If we start talking about the hypostatic union of Christ, we can understand that from our side of the door, but on the other side of the door, it mathematically does not check out. You don't lead a conversation to Jesus by talking about that, okay? So, on our side of the door, we have certain questions that are important to us, right? Why is it important to come to church? Because the Bible says so. But if you just start going out to unchurched, unbelieving atheist Andy and say, hey, the Bible says you need to go to church, that is not going to resonate with him, okay? So we understand the importance. We understand our mission statement to go and make disciples. But again, if you go to someone on the street and say, hey, I'm supposed to make disciples, come to church with me on Sunday, that is not going to compel their attention. It is going to draw them away. So don't ask the unimportant questions. Other unimportant questions, right? What's all the stuff that we're doing? That is an unimportant question, okay? Another unimportant question, I'm going to step on several church marketing, church communication gurus' toes with this. Another unimportant question, who's our target audience? Okay, even my mentor, right? That's the first question she always asks. Who's your target audience? No, I don't believe in that, okay? There is no church that, unless you're planting, okay? But there's no church that can sit down and say, who do we want coming to church, right? There is the church that says, who are we equipped to serve? That's who you need to speak to, and that's honestly who you want to come to your church. A good example of that, let me chase a rabbit trail here, language, okay? Yes, the Bible is for everyone. You don't speak Korean probably. Okay, if you're watching this, by the way, if you're watching this and you do have a multi-language church or you do have a Korean church and you come across this and you're like, hey, we have a Korean speaking church. That's awesome, right? I'd love to talk to you about that. But that's a good example, right? You cannot effectively disciple and equip someone if they only speak Korean and you're an only speaking English church, okay? My words are good too. If you're only an English speaking church, right? You cannot communicate with them. There's a barrier there. You're not equipped to speak to them. There is another church just down the street from me that is equipped to speak with them. They are a large Korean speaking congregation and I pray for them every time I drive past them, okay? I love that church. I cannot communicate and I cannot effectively share the gospel with that unless, obviously God's intervention is always an exception, okay? But you are equipped, okay? So stop asking, who do we want to target? Who do we want more people? Like, first of all, who are we equipped to serve? If you don't have a great kids ministry, families may not be the ones that you're equipped to serve. Okay, if you don't have a great college ministry, you're going to burn yourself out trying to get college kids to come to a place that obviously cannot effectively minister to them, okay? Other unimportant questions. Let me think. I try to stay on the good stuff so I don't stay too much on the bad stuff. I tell you what, put your question in the chat, right? Like these are the questions we've asked before. I'll tell you if they're important or not. But what I really want to do is look at our the questions that we like to ask. I'm actually going to pull them up here and I'm going to go through my actual document with you. I don't have time to go through the whole thing. I'm going to go to our client onboarding file folder thing here. And here we go, deep dive DNA. These are the questions. I'm going to do something that I didn't plan on doing. I'm going to share my screen here so you can actually see it. And we're going to go through it here. This is actually for our websites, but hey, we'll use it for the show. So let me go to Ecamm here. If you're an audio listener, man, thanks for staying with me here. And here we go, share my screen, boom. All right, so here's our deep dive framework here. This is for websites specifically, but many of the questions are still useful from just planning out what your message is for anything else that you're gonna be using, okay? When someone hears about your church, what do you want them to feel? Okay, so for example, do you want them to feel comfortable? Do you want them to feel curious? Do you want them to feel inspired? Do you want them to feel charged and ready to take action? There are churches out there that are looking, we have a client, that are looking for specifically to train up and send people out. They don't want a church of more than 50 people. They want to bring people in, grow them and nurture them in Christ, and then get them ready to send out, be missionaries, be church planners. That's great. So do you want them to feel like there's a battle message out there, right? Do you want them to feel like there's hope? Okay, there's a lot of things out there. If you want to know how to get people to pay attention to your message, you have to know how you want them to feel when they hear it. Okay, a lot of our clients, they want them to feel accepted, and that's why we start with something like, "Hey, like our church, we understand that Christians want to share their faith, they just don't know how to, and they feel awkward to." Right? You get that, Or, for example, Pastor Victor's church, right? Hey, we understand the world has this boot on your neck. Like, yes, I feel understood. No other church is telling me that. Every other church is just fluffy. Hey, come feel good, right? This church actually understands that, hey, I am going to get evicted next month unless I come up with $1,600. This church understands me, right? So when someone hears about your church, what do you want them to feel? And not only that, what do you want them to think about? Okay? What do you want them to think about? Do you want them to think about how great you are? Or do you want them to think about like how you understand them? Do you want them to think about like, you know what, maybe my life isn't so good right now? And what do you want them to remember? Okay, that's a huge thing here. Because again, if you want them to remember that Jesus loves them, but you never tell them that when you tell them about your church, that's a problem. Okay? So hey, I have a pastor client, again, I don't care if people forget our church, I want them to remember Jesus. So in their messaging work, it's always about Jesus, it's not about the church. Okay? Their guest path is a path to hear the gospel and then connect with the church to learn more, not just to come to service because they feel like coming to church, right? So what do you want them to remember? Okay? Specific language. Yeah, I definitely don't have time to go through all this. Specific language. Guest, visitors, life group, small group, worship, service, auditorium, worship center. That language has to be consistent throughout. Because if I say, hey, come find me in the sanctuary, and then a greeter says, can I take you to the worship center? The guest is going to be like, nah, my friend told me to meet him in the sanctuary. Oh, that's the same thing. Well, now I feel like an idiot, right? Consistent language breeds consistent trust. Okay? You have to think about what you do differently than everyone else, but also think about what you do the same. Okay? I understand that your church is uniquely equipped to uniquely reach a new group of people, but guess what? You probably have a Sunday service just like every other church has a Sunday service. So what do you do differently in that Sunday service? Okay? That's not important for messaging here. If someone after hearing your church can only do one thing, what would that one thing be? Okay? Now, you may say, that's a dumb question, Justin, but that question is different for every church. Okay? Some churches want people to come to church. Some churches want people to contemplate Jesus. Some churches want people to go to life groups. Some churches want people to go to an outreach event. Okay? We're building a site right now for a client. The first connection point for their community should be an outreach event, not Sunday morning service. Okay? They have a different path because that's how God's equipped them to do. So in that message that you're building out, what's the one thing? Now that one thing, you're going to get bored of it. You're going to get tired of it. Your people are going to get tired of it. Doesn't matter. You keep doing that same thing. What did John the Baptist keep saying? Repent, right? You got to be John the Baptist here. Come to Sunday service, come to Sunday service, come to Sunday service, come to Sunday. Like, I know you got VBS going on, but hey, if you haven't been to Sunday service, that's where I want you to go first to hear the gospel, right? Or be equipped, okay? This is a tough one, okay? If you can only tell the world 5 things about your church. All right, I got to get this off because like this is stuff we charge thousands of dollars for. So here we go. You got to see it. Go look on the YouTube if you want to see more here. If you can only tell the world 5 things about your church, what would those 5 things be? Now, I'm not saying 5 words. Don't just pick 5 words. But what are those 5 things that you would want to tell the world, okay? Jesus loves you. Yeah, got it, okay? We're not perfect. Hey, I understand that. You can't, nothing's going to change if nothing changes. Okay, I know that sounds simple, but some people need to hear that, okay? Whatever those 5 things are, one of those is going to be your message, okay? And, you know I have a client that wants to say all 5 of those things, and we tell them all the time, hey, you focus on one, okay? Because you're going to overwhelm someone, all right? Let's see here. This is a lot of website stuff. Okay, so we've got your one thing, okay? That's the one thing you want people to do, okay? The other thing is, what is the biggest problem that they're facing right now in their life? What's keeping them up at night, okay? And again, if your main message is, hey, tell me about your church. Well, we're a church of disciples making disciples. No one is restless at night, losing sleep because they're not being discipled, okay? They're losing sleep because they're having marital issues. They can't commit to anything. They're constantly letting people down. Like, there is a church out there for that person. Another church we have in Arizona is an introverted church. Okay, I know I'm just kind of free-forming it here, but there's another church in Arizona that is an introverted church, and they're specifically for introverts. And what keeps an introvert up at night? A lot of times it's self-hatred. It's self-loathing. It's being too hard on themselves. And so what their message is hey, we think people are too hard on themselves. It's hard to enjoy life when you don't let yourself enjoy it. And so what we do is we come alongside you and we just help you figure out what life is like, take it one step at a time, and live a fulfilled life through Jesus Christ, right? And that's a very powerful message for introverts. I can say that as one myself. If you can just say that, hey, I can sleep better at night because Jesus is going to help me figure out all these things that are going in my head and take that burden off my chest. Hey, I'm going to check out that church. There are other people that message will not resonate. And those people, this church is not equipped to serve. Okay? Those people wouldn't even enjoy this church because this church specifically does not shake hands when people come in the door. There's another church like that I know a volunteer of that actually I just thought we needed to connect. Okay, let me go back to my notes here because I can't freeform it. I got to stay on these notes, guys. I got to stay on these notes. The last thing you need to consider is is what specifically, we talked about what do you do the same as every church? What do you do differently than every church? Take a look at our messaging, right? So we want people to feel understood, and we want to take the anxiety out, right? So the people that we're equipped to serve, they want to share their faith with family and friends. They want to do that, but they're a little bit introverted, they're a little bit busy, they're a little bit turned off, they're a little church hurt themselves, which is why we start with, we know Christians want to share their faith with friends and family. They want to see them in heaven, but it's awkward, right? Because they're introverted and they've never been taught how. Because of church hurt, because of bad church practices, because they left the church so long ago, but they committed their life to Christ and they just need to reignite that flame, right? All that is in our message, okay? So what we do is we allow you to have church in your home, so you can invite in friends and family, not to a large building filled with people that they don't know, but instead to a comfortable environment to break bread, to learn and dig deep into the Bible and actually have discussions, so it's easier to share your faith with your friends and family, right? Again, we're using language here that encompasses everything that we talked about earlier. How do we want people to feel? How do we want people to think? How do we want people to remember? Okay, what are the most important things? Obviously, you need to know that we are a church that meets in homes, okay? All of those questions are going to inform your message, okay? Two things you need to know. Number one, it's an incredibly difficult craft, okay? I had to come to terms that I'm not great at it. I have to hire people to do it, and they are fantastic. If you are going to try to do it yourself, I highly recommend Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. It's going to get you on the right path. You're not going to have nearly as good a stuff as our story brand guides do, or any story brand guide, but it is going to get you on the right path, okay? But these questions, and I'm going to give you a word of warning here, these questions have to be answered honestly, and they have to be answered only once. This is not, your message is not something you change every year, okay? We like hearing a variety of compliments from our spouses, but think about like at our jobs, if you're bivocational, or remember when you used to work at a job, if they keep changing the rules of the job, they keep changing the branding of the job, okay? Every year you got to hang up new signs. Every year you got to wear new shirts. Every year you got to speak new languages. Hey, on Tuesdays we're going to greet the guests this way. Like, it gets overwhelming, okay? Don't keep updating these answers, okay? Or you're going to lose consistency. And honestly, change is good. I love change. I embrace change. But if you keep changing for the sake of change, you're not going to get traction, okay? So let's talk about, like, you've asked these questions. You've kind of got an idea of like, what's the one thing I want people to know about our church? How do I want them to feel? How do I want them to, what do I want them to do? What's that one next step I want them to take? And I want to make sure that it's communicating the most important thing I want them to remember. Let's talk about what to do with those answers next. So once you have the answers for like what you want people to know, let me try that again. Once you know what you want people to remember, how you want them to feel, like your overall message of your church, meaning like how we want to capture people's attention and what we want them to remember about our church and what we want them to do, you need to know how to implement it. You need to know how, like, where to put all this stuff, okay? I'm going to share with you the exact process that we use when we do digital marketing. I hate that term, but really like using the internet to spread the word about your church. You can also use everything I'm about to show you for your bulletin, for your slides, for your in-church, one-on-one conversations, even in Sunday school classrooms. All this is going to work. And let's talk about how you can implement your messaging, okay? And remember, without implementation, if you just sit here and just do some messaging thinking in your head, you're answering the questions that I asked you in your head, and you're like, this sounds good, I like this, let me tell John about this, until you actually implement it, put pen to paper, right? All of this we're talking about today is worthless, all right? This is a trap that many churches fall into. They do some work, and then they never actually put it into practice, okay? So let me give you some steps here that you need to implement. Number one, examine your website. Does your website reflect your messaging in a way that people cannot ignore? Okay? If you say, hey, I like this, you know what? Life is hard, we get it, okay? Jesus said he can take that burden off. He's taking it off our shoulders. He's taking it off our congregation's shoulders. We're living freely. We're living more abundantly. We're living more peacefully with ourselves and with others. And we want to join you because we want you to have the same right? We want you to live a better life as well because I care about you, because you're my neighbor, right? But if that's your message and I go to your website and it says, welcome home, Sundays at 10:30, doesn't match. It's a discontinuity there, okay? So you got to examine your website. Your one-liner may not fit on your, like once you land on your site, we call it the header, the hero, all right? It may not fit there, but some version of it can, okay? For example, another client church, hey, we understand that churches have dropped the ball. They haven't been answering the hard questions, and we think that's a problem. So at our church, we answer the hard questions and we figure out our faith together so you can experience the full peace of Christ and share it with others, right? That's a bit much. So when you go to their website, what does it say? Welcome to a church without the baggage. That's curiosity driven, okay? And then they talk more about that mission in their messaging on their website, okay? Again, your website has to match it, okay? Your other online presence, okay? We don't talk about this often enough, but we will in the future. Your online presence, specifically talking Google. If I Google your church, what is going to show up? Is it going to say, welcome home again? Sunday services at 10:30. Is it going to be your mission statement? We're a church on a mission to make disciples who make disciples. If you want that compelling message, you have to put it everywhere. And this includes what shows up on Google. Your social media, okay? Your Instagram, your LinkedIn bio, for example, okay? If you say all that about your church, and then I go to your Facebook page or your Instagram page and your bio says, we love Christ and we love people, Sunday mornings at 10:30. Again, generic, actionless, pass, okay? Put that on your Instagram bio, okay? We get it. Life is hard. There should be something better, right? Jesus is better. Click here to learn more about Jesus, right? Whatever that is, okay? Your personal communications, okay? Again, we talked about that consistency of language, all right? This is something that's very tough, but one of the churches that's growing like wildfire, they said, we don't want to invite people to church. We want them to invite them to groups. So if you hear this language, okay, if you hear, my finances are crap, okay? If you hear, I parked in the back because I don't want the Rebo man to see my car up front because they figured out where I worked, okay? If you hear, don't tell my wife this, but if you hear any of that, invite them to your group, right? Don't invite them to church. Don't say, oh man, that sucks. Wish I could help you. Like, that's the language that we want to speak into, okay? And so even in personal communications, we can use this language. Why? Because consistency breeds trust, all right? Coca-Cola, enjoy happiness, or whatever the name is, okay? McDonald's, I'm loving it, right? Like, there can be unique campaigns, but overall, the overarching message is you're going to love it, okay? Consistency breeds trust. You see that red can, you're parched, you want to do it. Gatorade, you see those bright neon colors, you're like, oh man, that sounds refreshing for some reason. I'm not a huge Gatorade fan. Trying to get my kids off of it. I know I'm drinking my own poison here, Dr. Pepper Zero. I can't break that habit, but I see that can, I see that aluminum, I'm like, I want that. All right. Consistency breeds trust. I see that maroon, purplish maroon Dr. Pepper can, and I'm like, yes, that's gonna fulfill my thirst. Okay. That's going to make me feel better, right? I see that consistency in your branding, but also in your colors and all that stuff, but also in the language you use. Use the same language, people will start to feel comfortable, okay? Again, we like variety in our compliments from our spouse, but we need consistency in our messaging from the organizations that we trust. Your church is no exception, okay? Let me help you in one way with your website. Go to, I don't have a thing on my screen because again, I'm in a new setup here. Go to Nava Church website. I'll have a link down below in the description, navachurchwebsite.com. I'll give you the same framework we use for all of our clients that have grown their church, okay? After we did work with them, and part of that work includes updating their website. You don't need to change your website. You don't need a new website subscription. I'm not selling you software here. I am selling you just the messaging that's going to capture attention, it's going to pique people's interest, and it's going to get them to take that next step that you want them to take. NavaChurchWebsite.com. I should have started with this, but let me close with this. I talked to a pastor a couple weeks ago, and I was like, hey, tell me about your messaging. And he's like, the Bible. I said, what do you mean? He's like, well, we preach the Bible. The Bible's all we need. I said, so when you preach on Sundays, do you just walk up on stage and read the Bible? And he's like, well, no. Like, I communicate it in a way that people will understand, can digest, and they can work it out themselves. And I said, perfect. So your messaging isn't your Bible. You use the Bible, but like, what's your messaging that you tell people? Like, if someone says, tell me about your church, you don't read the Bible to them, right? Like, what do you tell people when they ask about your church, right? If the Bible was our only messaging, then why do we preach, right? Why do we have events? Why don't we just read the Bible on the corner and expect people to come in? We understand that persuasion is effective. Persuasion is one of the ways that we get people to pay attention. Numerous times throughout Acts, Paul reasoned and persuaded people, okay? And Paul said in 2 Corinthians 5:11, right? Because judgment is coming, I persuade others to join the kingdom, okay? I may have gotten that reference wrong, but I think that was it, right? Paul says God calls them, I persuade them, okay? Persuasion is effective. And in today's modern culture, messaging is the way that we persuade people to just give us the time of day. We no longer live in a culture where people naturally trust the church, where people naturally say, I need something to do on Sundays, where people naturally say, my kids are hell raisers, they need to go to church. It's no longer the case. We have to break constant patterns of the church is bad. You don't need the church. You're your own captain of your soul. You're your own gospel maker. You are your own truth. We have to break that pattern, and we have to realize that our message that we preach, or our message that we communicate to our community, needs to be something that compels them in a way that they can't ignore. They have to find out, this place is for me. This place can help me. Wherever you're watching, if this helped you, I'm a little in sorts if you hadn't been able to tell. I'm in a new office. I'm sitting down. I don't like doing these anymore, sitting down. Okay? Lighting's not great. Sound's probably not that great. But if this helped you, click the like button, subscribe wherever you are, and again, go get that framework, navachurchwebsite.com, and I'll see you guys next week.
That's going to do it for today's episode of the Best Known Church Show with Justin Nava. Be sure to subscribe to stay updated on the latest news, strategies, and resources that you need to reach 10x more people and become the best known in your community. To send us a message or leave a voicemail for Justin to be played on a future show, visit thebestknownchurchshow.com. And if you'd like to work with us so you can focus on your ministry, give us a call at 832-861-7654. Until next time, stay outrageous, unreasonable, and relentless.